Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the State of Hoops podcast. This is your co-host, Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host, Nate Malchow. Nate, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Schleck. Getting towards the holidays and a little holiday break for everybody. The South Dakota schools will all take a 4-day mandatory break, but a lot of good basketball leading into that, and excited again for the upcoming season, getting through December, but really excited for this episode today. We have a true legend in basketball, girls basketball specifically, joining us today. So Schleck, I'll let you get the intro.
Yeah, we are elated to have our second ever Legend Series episode with special guest Becky Flynn Jensen, a name that's synonymous with basketball in South Dakota. What we want to do this episode, Becky, is, a lot of times people equate numbers with you, but this is about work ethic, a family's basketball legacy, a community. So that's the kind of story we want to tell, but we're just grateful that you were able to join us today.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't you give everyone an update, Becky, on what you're doing, where you're living, how the family's doing? I know you have college and high school athletes yourself in the household.
I sure do. So yeah, I'm currently working at the University of South Dakota. I've been here for 29 years. I started out as the assistant women's basketball coach. I was that for 10 years. And now I've been on the athletic academic advising side for the last 19 and just finished up my first year as director of the Student Athlete Success Center here at USD. My husband farms, so we live on the family farm that he kind of grew up on, and we have 3 kids. My oldest is a senior playing basketball at Mount Marty, getting his degree in business administration. My daughter just is a freshman here at the University of South Dakota. She's on the women's basketball team. And then I have a son who is a junior in high school and is kind of in the midst of his basketball season. So yeah, we're kind of on the run every night in the gym every night, which is perfect and where I choose to spend it. So I'm really glad that they chose basketball and nothing against soccer or something like that. But if I had to be sitting there 5 days a week, I'm not sure I could work. I don't think I could do it, boys.
And that's what we're going to hit on. I mean, this is when we talk about Becky growing up in Wakonda and just being a part of a basketball family. Becky's dad, Ron, legendary coach in Wakonda, was a mentor to a lot of us young coaches coming through at that time. We got some great stories and some great content, and it's awesome that Becky, you can continue to do that with your own kids and keep that basketball legacy rolling full circle.
Yeah, it's been very fun. It's kind of the reason I got out of college coaching, honestly, was when I had kids and, I just could never envision someone coaching my kids while I was coaching someone else's. And so I wanted to be kind of part of their basketball experience. And so I've enjoyed being able to coach my kids, from the time they were 5 up through 8th grade, and oftentimes brought my dad in to help and as a guest coach, and he would come in and tell me all the things I'm doing wrong and tell the kids and use his old school terms, which they loved. And he was a huge part of their youth basketball development too. So it was really fun to be coaching with him on the sidelines.
Well, and before we start talking about your childhood in Wakonda, Becky, why don't you tell our viewers and listeners, I was scrolling through social media the other day and I saw a shot that your oldest son, who plays at Mount Marty, made against Wichita State. That was exciting. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was fun. Of all games for him to hit that shot, it was against Wichita State and it happened to be on ESPN. If that happens at Mount Marty against Doane or something, who's seeing it? No one. And I don't know where the celebration, you guys, because I've always taught my kids, act like you've been there before. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but he's covering his ears. I didn't even know who that was after or any of it. But I don't know if he doesn't do those antics, if it makes it to number 2 on Sports Center Play of the Day or whatever. So I think, obviously, I don't know. He must take after the Jensens on the celebration part. But yeah, the shot itself, that was crazy. So yeah, kind of fun.
That's great.
Normally, I have to rely on Becky's brother Joe to send me those things, but I happen to see this one on my own. But for those viewers, just go search social media, and Becky's son, Jake, who plays at Mount Marty, hit a 3/4 court shot at the end of the half. Was it the half, Becky?
Yeah. And at the end of the half, cut it to 9. So it was very exciting.
That's awesome. Well, okay. So, Becky, I talk about this a lot on the podcast. I have a bias towards coaches' kids. I'm a coach's kid. You're a coach's kid. So I'm always interested in hearing the stories of you growing up with your father as a longtime coach. But legend has it that you actually started practicing with the varsity as a fourth grader because you were there helping as a student manager. Do you want to talk about that?
So yeah, I was in kindergarten when we moved to Wakonda. And so that's when my dad kind of took over the girls basketball program. So I was lucky enough to be able to follow him to practice. And after school, I would just meet him in the gym and kind of get to be part of it. And then starting in fourth grade, he kind of started a manager program for kids that I think he saw potential in, that you could be a manager, sign up. Basically, you had to come to practices. Usually it was for if you were sixth grader going into, going to be the seventh grader the next year, he kind of started grooming those kids. But I was in fourth grade and I was just begging why can't I be a manager? I want to be a manager. And so, yeah, the first year in fourth grade, it started out more, I'm sure the older girls had to have hated me because my job was to stand on the baseline. And as soon as that shot goes up, I had to run back. I had to sprint the length of the court. If I beat everyone going inline to inline before they got to that 3-point line, then they had to get on the line and run. And so I thought it was really fun to see if I could get them to run. Let's just say we were probably in shape that year. But so yeah, I kind of started out with that. And then slowly, as I got into fifth and sixth grade, I was getting into more and more drills, which, yeah, I feel like was a huge advantage. Obviously, then going into seventh grade and kind of jumping into high school basketball from there, you didn't feel like it was your first time getting to go against that type of competition and, that level. So yeah, I feel like that was a big advantage, and it was fun to be able to do it, especially in fifth and sixth grade. But usually there'd be 2 or 3 of us, so with my friends too. And I kind of think that is part of what made our team so good down the road. So
Well, when you start that early and you talk about being innovative in a small town and getting girls excited about basketball, I think that this gives us a little background into the foundation of that winning streak. Here's Becky along with her peers at a young age, working with Coach Flynn, being a part of seeing what it takes to play at that level. And that's awesome. You talk about getting young kids excited for the game, and that's a lesson for today's world too. I mean, we got to get young kids, young girls excited about basketball and getting them playing. And it sounds like Coach Flynn was light years ahead on that trend there. And it just, we're going to get into more of the dynasty and all of that, but I think I understand the building blocks to that a little bit better now.
well, yeah, I remember when we first moved to Wakonda, they were bad in basketball. I don't know if they had won a game the year before we got there, but they had a really good softball team. And so I think Dad kind of just started going around and starting recruiting kids from the softball team to come out and play basketball, and even talking to some of these parents, where they live in the country, to be able to get them to town and how can we get them to practice, and getting the families to buy in as well as the kids that, hey, if I can make this softball player into a basketball player. Like, I see athleticism here, we can work with that. And so I think that's kind of how it started with our older kids in the program at the time. He kind of got those kids to buy in, and which was huge because we had some athletes then to work with. And I think he also thought, obviously he was really good at getting youth involved too. As far as like playground equipment, one of the first things that, we got a basketball hoop. We got nets on the basketball hoops on the playground. And we had a thing where you could get out of first one's done with lunch, got to go to the lunchroom, or got to go into the other gym. And there's like a 20-minute period where you could play basketball. It became very competitive on who could eat the fastest to get to the balls first. You snooze, you lose. I still blame that school system on why I eat so fast. But yeah. And then
Awesome.
yeah. And then starting, we didn't have a fifth grade girls program. He kind of started my fifth grade year was the first year we started. There was a fifth and sixth grade boys program, but there wasn't a girls program. And he's like, why is there not fifth grade girls basketball? There's boys basketball. And they're like, well, I don't know if there's other teams that can. Anyway, so he kind of got that going. So got to start playing organized, basketball. It might have only been 6-7 games, but that's kind of where it started with that too.
So when we had Jason Sutherland as a guest, Becky, one of the themes that we discovered is everyone talked about his raw athletic ability, but his sheer work ethic was just was just amazing. And he talked about that. And I just know from being friends with your brother, Joe, the work ethic you had. You obviously were gifted with a lot of natural talent and ability, but talk about, Joe says your dad had a calendar and you'd have to he'd mark a star by every 100 hours you would put in the gym in the summer. And again, passed down through to me, relayed back to me, was there was summers you had 650 hours in the gym. Talk a little bit about that, you know, your love for it, but how your dad instilled that work ethic in you, you know, as you were getting ready to come of age.
Yeah. Yeah, he started what was called the 200-hour club. So he would give us all out calendars and we would have to fill in our time and how much time we spent each day in the gym. And so the goal for everyone was supposed to be to get 200 hours. And I don't know why I had set my own goal of I wanted to get 600. That was in my head. I felt like it was feasible. He also gave us 50 hours for going out for track. He felt like that was important. And so people knew, like, it was kind of understood that you aren't going to make the varsity basketball team if you're not part of the 200-hour club. So he got a lot of kids going out for track to get those 50 hours. If you went to a basketball camp, you got like 25 hours for that. So he kind of started instilling those types of things. And yeah, and then the star chart kind of came after that. And I think that was part of the reason why I was big on that upping my thing, because you get 100. So on the star chart in our locker room, and it would reset every month. But at the very first month, he put on the hours. So obviously, if you want to win, right, I get 6 stars to start the, everyone else has 2 and I have 6. So I'm already I'm on a head start. And then after that, it was kind of based on your game performance. So you didn't get stars for points. You got stars for field goal percentage. So you had to shoot 50% from the field to get a star. You had to shoot 75% from the free throw line to get a star. You had to have five assists, got you a star. So those are the things that got you stars. And steals. I think it was like 3 steals got you a star or something. And then at the end of the month, he would give like either a star of the week. I think it was either a t-shirt. And then, it started out with like, honestly, like pop in a candy bar or something, you know. It wasn't like a huge thing, but it was a big thing to win the star of the month or whatever. And then there was a board with, here's our stars of the month. And yeah, it kind of started from there. And he was a big believer in goal setting. And that is still something that I've tried to instill in my own kids, in my youth teams that I coach. Like, what are our goals for the week? And they should be tangible, like, I want to score 30 points a game. That's not a good goal. They should be tangible. They should be something you can control. But yeah, he kind of started that, and he instilled in that. You have to set goals. You have to have high goals, and there should be some goals that are maybe a little bit out of reach, it feels like, and then others that are like daily goals. What's your goal for the day? And so that's kind of how it started. And yeah, from there, I think it became an obsession almost, especially as the streak progressed and we started getting in there. I think it would be safe to say that I was obsessed with being in the gym, or at the playground or on the court, just because I just always felt this sense of guilt if I wasn't out there. And it wasn't anyone that instilled that in me. It was just something I imposed on myself. And I see it in my own kids to this day. My son, who's a junior, is the exact same way. If he goes a day without playing, it just drives him crazy. So in his head, I'm like, well, just go, Luke, because you're going to be obsessed about this until you get into the gym and get it done. So just go get it done. But I remember, as a punishment, because I didn't get in trouble very often, but my punishment was you don't get to play basketball. So yeah, that was what they took away. So that to me was powerful. So I like to think that's why I was so good.
Two things out of that, Becky. Number one, that's amazing. And just going into the competitive mindset that you had with putting in the time to become better and improve yourself. Basketball, we all know, is a game of time. If you're not putting it in, if you're not getting in the gym, I don't care how good of an athlete you are, there's such a skill set to it that you have to put in that time to refine the skills. You're thinking of, if I'm not putting in the time, somebody is, and they're getting better and I'm going without that. Yeah, that is awesome to get that perspective from you. Secondly, I was a young 20-some-year-old coach going to coaching clinics back in the early 2000s. They used to have them at the Ramada Inn up in Sioux Falls, right across from the old Sioux Falls Arena. And they would pack these conference rooms with coaches, just maybe coaches who won state titles, coaches, a couple college coaches, but I can only remember a few of them. But one I remember was Ron Flynn, and he was retired from coaching at that time, but he came in And he's talking exactly about what you're getting at right there in terms of the goal setting, in terms of the hours that you put in terms of that system. But after the fact, I followed up on some things with Coach Flynn. And one thing he talked to me about is that you have to have things be competitive and you have to have prizes.
Yeah.
And he specifically mentioned that the T-shirts, the candy
Yeah.
bar, the pop, whatever, the reward, and you do it in front of other people there too. And kids start building confidence. I mean, something tangible for those kids to see that they can be proud of, that they're recognized, and knowing that they put in the work. And he specifically mentioned that to me. He said, Chow, you want to build some things, you got to make things competitive, you got to put in the time, and you got to have prizes. And
Yeah.
and we started doing that, and very simple but highly effective, and just one of the few people I can remember talking about that, and certainly made an impact on a young coach.
That's awesome. No, yeah, I think, and it doesn't have to be anything big, but and I think it is also being recognized in front of your peers, and what I really liked about that star chart too is it didn't, you could be the kid that shot 2 for 4 from the field or 3 for 6. You're going to get a star for that. You don't have to be dropping these big numbers to get stars. It was more about the effort,
Mm.
and the energy and effort, which I really liked that too. Cause you see kids sometimes putting up big numbers, but how efficient were they? And I still look at that. And what I really like now is that there's that plus minus chart, you guys. I
Yeah.
think that is so cool because I think you can be a kid that maybe doesn't do a lot that gets noticed on the stat line, but you have a high positive rating. You're a high, chemistry type kid. Those things still matter. So
Well, let's fast forward now, Becky, to the fall of 1986. You are a seventh grader, and that in and of itself is amazing. Not many athletes in South Dakota, regardless of class, can say they played varsity basketball as a seventh grader. But first time, what do you remember the first time putting on a varsity uniform, playing for your dad as a seventh grader?
scared. I played with my older sister and she was kind of bossy, so that was a little bit scary. And it was her and her friends, but they were also very, very good to me. I mean, they treated me like a younger sister because that's how they kind of grew up.
Yep.
Since my sister was older, I was like a younger sister. And so, I just knew it was a big deal. And I knew it wasn't an easy decision, I'm sure, for my dad at the time either to do that. It wasn't that all that common. And he's always said, if you're going to coach your own kids, they better either be the best on the team or they better be the worst. Because if there's somewhere in between, that's where you set yourself up to fail and where parents and things can start to. And so I just remember thinking, I don't want to let anyone down. I don't want to let my dad down. I don't want to get him, I need to do a good job. But I also knew that my role wasn't necessarily to go out there. I didn't need to score a bunch of points for it. It was more of like I needed to be a ball handling guard at that point, and get others involved in the offense and those types of things and play good defense. I could do that. I could get rebounds and play defense. And I was probably built different than most, I think I was 5'7" in seventh grade. I think I grew about an inch every year that I was through high school. So yeah, and at that point I had been playing like and practicing with those kids for a couple years as a manager. And so I think that helped too. I was at all the open gyms with them. I think that certainly helped as far as being comfortable out there and playing against that type of physicality, I guess, and speed of the game. It was easier to adjust. But yeah, probably afraid, I would say. It was probably my first. But yeah.
And you played in 5 state tournaments, Becky, and the seventh grade year was the year of your high school career. You did not qualify for state that year, correct?
Correct.
So let's now fast forward to the next year. You have a year under your belt, and we looked up your stats. So you played as an 8th grader. You averaged 15 and a half points, looks like 5 rebounds, 5 assists. And a special thing, you mentioned it earlier, you played with your sister Lori, who was a senior that year, correct? So what stands out to you about that season when it comes to specifically taking the court with your sister Lori?
Yeah, that was fun. I just knew that I was going to have to run fast because my sister, she could get that rebound and she would hurl it the length of the court. And I better be on the receiving end of it or it was going to go out of bounds. Like, I just remember thinking she had an arm on her. It was a rocket. She was a pitcher. And my dad would say she was the most natural of the two of us. She had the most natural ability. And that I had to work for everything I got. And that was probably true. She didn't put the time in that I did, but she She was always there. Like if there was a game, she was the one that was organizing it. She was a really good leader, really good captain, getting kids together in the summer to play and those types of things. But yeah, I don't know how many of my points came at the receiving end of her softball passes, but it had to be quite a few.
Yeah, get out and go.
Yeah.
That's getting the fast break started and just having that you get used to playing with each other, and
Yep.
certainly those are advantages there where those habits or those instincts right there too, and it's a good role to be on the receiving end of getting those layups. So
Yeah,
that's
for sure. Yep.
yeah.
And of course, that season, is it fair to say, Becky, 7 is the season that really put Wakonda girls basketball on the map in a big way? Talk a little bit about the state tournament that year. You made it all the way to the state championship game, and you played another. What's unique about this story is a future dynasty played a current dynasty. Talk a little bit about that state tournament.
Armor. Yeah, that was a huge game. And there was girls on there that, I also had known or looked up to, Jody Pipes, Dana Nielsen, who both went on to have great, along with obviously a lot of they had won 5 titles. That was probably their 5th title. That was the only loss we had that year. But I just remember thinking that was, I would say I was scared that game. You're going out there with these absolute kind of legends, honestly, like 5 titles. I knew they were going on to play college ball. Like that was a really big deal. So yeah, it was a fun game. It was a learning experience for us for sure. Cause the class above me was a really good class. So they would have been freshmen. So we played a lot of young kids that year. I think we started maybe 2 freshmen and an 8th grader. So we just knew that, I just remember thinking at the end of that game, though, losing sucks. And I don't care to do this again. So what do we got to do to make this not happen again? And that kind of was where I think the obsession became, if you don't want to be on the losing end, what are you going to do to get better today? And that was kind of the mentality every day. And we were just lucky that we had a group that started out, we started kindergarten together. And honestly, that was the team we had through our senior year, which really, you think that in a bigger school, you're not necessarily on the playground together as kindergarten. You might be in 4 different elementaries or across the town or whatever. But we were lucky enough that, we played together every day from kindergarten through senior year. And I think it was that chemistry that you can't necessarily always teach that we had and what made us effective. And we pushed each other, so there was that feeling like they're out practicing, I better get out and practice, or you're not going to make the team, you're not going to make the rotation, you're not going to be in the lineup. So that pushes people to be better too.
So you talk about the tough loss to Armor right there and how you use that as motivation to get back, to get better, to set the stage for what was going to go on over the next couple of years. Just curious, Becky, in your competitive mindset, do you remember those tough losses sometimes more than the big wins?
Well, 100%. Like Joe was like, I was like, well, I hope Joe, they're not, and my brother, like I said, he's the historian of the family, but I'm like, I hope they don't ask about the wins because I honestly don't remember a lot of the wins, you guys. I remember the 2 losses though. I remember the loss to Armor, and then I remember the loss to Northwestern my senior year, which was the next loss. And so, we were fortunate enough not to lose a game my freshman, sophomore, junior year. And so I don't know what that is, whatever it is in 2, but from 8th grade through my senior year, we had 2 losses and I absolutely remember them.
That's amazing, and for those listening, I've been fortunate to be around a lot of people who have had success in the sports world, competitive as a player, as a coach, and that is one of the commonalities of those people that I talk to. They remember the tough losses and kind of that moment where they get knocked down and I got to get back up and I got to improve and I got to get better so these things don't happen again. They remember those moments more than the big wins.
I know, absolutely. I mean, I joke that I don't love winning as much as I hate losing, I
Yep.
think.
Go.
The wins just felt like that was something you're supposed to do. You move on. I wish if I could go back, I would appreciate the wins a lot more than we did. I just felt like it was an expectation. I don't know if we enjoyed them as much as we maybe should have or could have, but the losses eat you up. I mean, the loss to Armor ate me up for, 4 years. And that loss to the Northwestern still, like, you're like, that's still like probably my worst memory from high school is that, so.
Well, hold that thought, Becky, because we're going to explore that here shortly. But we are going to transition to two sponsor ads right now. Our first sponsor is the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame, one of the many Hall of Fames Becky Flynn Jensen is in. Love South Dakota hoops? Discover the legacy at the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving our state's rich basketball history for generations to come. Visit their incredible exhibits at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls and explore stories, milestones, and legends online at www.sdbbhof.com. From iconic players and coaches to unforgettable teams, this is South Dakota basketball.
Also, if you're looking for the ultimate basketball experience in the Black Hills, look no further than Park Bench Athletics. They are your host for premier youth basketball tournaments all winter long. Join Park Bench Apparel for epic events starting in December and going through April, with over 100 teams from South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, and Colorado at each tournament. This is perfect competition for any level. Check out Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills or hang out at the Watiki Indoor Water Park when your team is not playing. Sign up today at parkbenchapparel.com or find on Turning Machine and let the games begin.
You're listening to the State of Hoops podcast, Legends episode with special guest Becky Flynn Jensen. All right, Becky, we talked about the rise. Now we're going to talk about the dynasty years, and we're going to focus on the three consecutive undefeated state championship teams that you had in 1988, 1989, 1890. And my first question before we get into some of your teammates and friends that you played with is who came up with the name the Wakonda Green Machine? Was that a Hanson Anderson deal, or did you guys call yourself the Green Machine? Because everyone kept referring.
That does sound like something Dick Hansen probably did coin. Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't remember where that came from, but
Yeah,
I would not doubt it if Dick was the one that came up with that.
I just remember that, and people were referring to your dynasty those years as the Green Machine, and you were a machine as a team. And so talk a little bit about some of your core teammates those years: Nikki Johnson, Kathy Denzine, Becky Lyso, Trina Hansen. I'm missing some, but talk about playing with that core group.
Yeah. So much fun. It's one thing to be able to take your, like I talked about the chemistry on the floor, but it was just chemistry off the court as well. And we just had it. And what I loved about that team and those girls, and really all the ones that I was able to play with throughout the years, was the unselfishness of everyone and how the team was way more important than individual accolades or parts. And I think I just feel so fortunate to have grown up in a time without social media and all those things. Stats were just not that big a deal back then. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't publicized really. And so my dad, I felt like, was really good about getting kids to buy into their roles. And he made every kid feel important. And I feel like that is so important. And I tried to do that with the youth teams I coach too. Like, you're the best defender we have on the court. I'm going to put you on their best player, and your job is to shut them down. Getting them to buy in, to believe that was, and at the end of the game, he only had 6. He came in averaging 18. He got 6 points. I'm like, yeah, that you did that, and you're a best help defender. You're the guy I can always rely on to be there. You're the gal in this case, and I feel like those roles were all important, and we all did our roles to the best of our ability. And at the end of the night, we weren't necessarily caring about whose name was in the paper the next day or whatnot. And a lot of my points, you guys, came on steals from my teammates that threw me the passes at the end of it. I was at the top of a press. Well, the kid at the top of the press is going to end up with more points because they're the ones that are oftentimes getting the steals. Our 4 and 5s that are back, they might not be that, but they have a role there. You're protecting the basket. You're doing this. So I was lucky enough to be on the receiving end of a lot of those things, but my role certainly was no more important than anyone else on our team. And I think that's what made us great.
And when you have a true leader in a sense, and your most talented player is buying into that team aspect, and you have a great group of teammates around you, a simple formula with success in everything too, giving credit to teammates, lifting them up, making them better, doing those things. And that's a great testament to that.
Yeah. And I think I was lucky enough a lot of those girls were first team all-state players too. So we were all on the same team. And I think, it's not like any of it was getting a ton of shots up, but we were very efficient because we were very selective on the shots that we took. They were going to be good shots. quality shots, high percentage shots for us. Because you might say, like, how was there enough balls to go around? But that really wasn't an issue. And like a Becky Liso, for example, she was maybe not even the receiving end. She was our point guard. She got a assist in that way. But like sometimes she was the ball reversal person that got the ball from A to B. And it didn't necessarily show up on a stat line, but she was absolutely essential to what we were doing out there. And she knew it and everyone else knew it. Our whole town knew it. Like she was just as a big a deal, even though her stat line might not have been the same. That wasn't her role necessarily. So yeah, I'm just proud to have gotten to play with those girls.
One of the most remarkable things is Joe shared some of the box scores and the scores with me, Becky, from those 3 years. That run was obviously your undefeated teams, your state championship teams, but you played AA schools. Here's little Wakonda, South Dakota, playing AA schools, the big schools, and you weren't just winning. It was 40, 50-point games. What kind of pride did you all have when you came and played the big schools, the Sioux Falls schools, whatever? But the margin of victory is remarkable to me.
Well, it was fun. It was fun to be able to play against bigger schools because I think what you hear when you're from a Class B school is they're good, yeah, but they're not playing against the best. They're not playing against the bigger schools, and they're Class B. And so to this day, when I hear that, and I hear it all the time, I just was like, you don't know, you obviously haven't been to some of these competitive Class B, seen these Class B schools play. But because I also thought with the system that we have and the point system where you don't get as many points for playing a smaller school, I was really impressed with the AA schools that would play us because they didn't have to. And kudos to them for doing it because, the thing was, and I think why some schools didn't, is they felt like they had nothing to gain and everything to lose. But I think as the winning streak, got up there, I think they're like, well, but, we could maybe knock them off and break the winning streak. So that maybe became the reason why they played us. Or maybe it was just coaches that were confident enough to be like, hey, we want to go out and play the best. And it's going to get us better, even if it is a loss, But yeah, those were fun because there are also teams that hadn't seen us play 100 other times. And we kept going against the same teams like the Hurleys of the world that we played 4 times a year. And so to get to play against new and different competition and some better athletes and those types of things, yeah, it was fun.
Well, for the listeners, what Becky is talking about here with Class B Wakonda going and playing, it's one thing to play Class A schools. It's another thing to play Class AA schools. And even you see that to this day. You might see Class B playing Class A or Class A playing Class AA, but you almost rarely, if ever, see Class B play Class AA nowadays. So for the listeners, that's what makes this streak, and we'll get into that, the 101 game win streak. Wakonda was going and playing the best the state had to offer at that time. And the other thing too is this is when girls basketball was still in the fall. So it's not like they had the option to go play other states because probably most of those states were in the wintertime, but their green machine wasn't ducking anybody. They were going and taking on the best South Dakota had to offer, and that's what makes this run and this streak even more special.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know, I think it was maybe my sophomore year that we were able to play, Sioux Falls, Lincoln, and Pine Ridge, which both went on to Lincoln win the title that year. Did they get second to Huron? And they might have got second to Huron, and Pine Ridge won the state A championship, and we got to play both of those teams. And so that was the first year where we could say that we were the best in South Dakota, because we felt like we had played against the best and beat the best. I was appreciative to be able to play those games and have those opportunities. That was before you had all those classics that we have now where you're going to get to play good competition. You kind of had to go schedule those games yourself to be able to play those types of teams.
Quick story, Becky. I grew up in Mobridge, and one of my high school teachers was Byron Utter, who at the time, your era, was Langford's head girls basketball coach. He later took Mobridge girls to a couple state A tournaments, but he always told my dad and I, if it wasn't for Wakonda, he would have had 2 state championships.
Shout out to Paula, Julie Jensen. Yeah, they had really good teams. Yeah, that was unfortunate for them to be on the losing end of that twice, but they had some really good teams during that time for sure.
And then you look at it in the context of today with the SODAC 16 format, Becky. Hurley, there was a few of those years, I've been told Hurley may have been the second or third best Class B team and one of the best teams in the state regardless of class, but they couldn't get by Wakonda.
Yeah. No, they absolutely were. We played them 4 times a year. It was by far the most nervous I would ever get for any game was playing Hurley because the games were always competitive. It was never going to be a blowout, so you knew it was going to come down to, it was one of those rare games where we got to see the fourth quarter. Our starters never really got to see the fourth quarter. We usually only got to see about half the third quarter. But we knew against Hurley, we were probably playing the whole game. And yeah, they had some really good teams and they did end up winning. After I graduated the next year, they won the state title. So I was happy for those kids that they got to experience that. I feel bad for those ones because they absolutely, in today's system, would have been at the state tournament and our hardest games that came before we got there. So I'm really glad with this new format.
Yep. Well, we're going to transition now to 2 more sponsor ads. Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors. For over 30 years, Pat and Pam Tiefenthaler of Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors have been trusted names in and around the Sioux Falls community. Building relationships that last, they're humbled and honored to serve buyers and sellers with care and expertise. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or navigating a move because life happens, Pat and Pam will walk beside you, guiding you every step of the way. Call Pat or Pam at Tiefenthaler Homes with Hague Realtors today, your trusted partners in Sioux Falls. Visit tiefteam.hague.com or call 605-321-0550.
And if you're looking for trusted financial guidance close to home, visit Charles Schwab's Sioux Falls, South Dakota branch, your local investment firm. Led by Lonnie Struckman and Zach Hansen, financial consultants with over 25 years of combined experience. Their team is here to help you reach your financial goals. Whether you're planning, investing, or just have questions, Lonnie, Zach, and their team put clients first every time. Call 605-231-4844. Search Schwab Sioux Falls at schwab.com to book your appointment today. Charles Schwab, own your tomorrow.
Give and go.
All right, Becky. Well, every episode of our podcast, we have a give and go segment. And so this is one of my favorite segments we do every episode. It's kind of a back and forth dialogue or question with our special guests. This one is all about winning streaks. Just so our viewers and listeners know, I'm going to set the stage and I'm going to let Becky and Nate go back and forth on this a little bit because we have history in our studio. We have Becky and Ron Flynn and the Wakonda Green Machine got to 101 straight wins. And lo and behold, some coach named Fred Tibbetts later takes over at Sioux Falls Roosevelt, hires a young kid right out of graduate school named Nate Malchow to be his assistant and freshman coach. And Nate was in on that last part of that winning streak. I'm going to open the floor up first of all. Becky, starting with you, when did you start hearing a lot of the noise around the winning streak in your tenure?
Well, I think it was kind of in our second year, my sophomore year. We had won at that point 50, at the end of my sophomore year, I guess that would have been about 50 games. I mean, we played about 25 games a year, but it was really midway through my junior year when we were going to break the state record, which I think was 68. Am I right on that? You'll have to refer to Joe for that one. But I remember that was a big one. And then the next big kind of milestone after that one was trying to get to 100 because I don't know, 100, right? It's century mark, round number. I don't know. But obviously with each year, you have a target on your back and teams are gunning for you. They haven't lost in a year. They haven't lost in 2 years. They haven't lost in 3 years. And so I feel like with every game that kind of built, but I don't remember feeling the real pressure, honestly, until my senior year. And I think it was because we had lost such a nucleus of players from that junior year. We lost 3 kids that have been in our starting lineup for 4 years, 2 first-team All-Staters. And just knowing that my role was going to change considerably from, I didn't ever feel the need to score, up until then, because we had so many others that could. So I never felt the pressure to be like, I have to be on tonight, because I knew if I wasn't, there's 4 others that would have been. And so, but I feel like the senior year that kind of changed a little bit. And I felt like I don't know if it was self-induced pressure or just pressure I put on myself, but that I was going to have to be a scorer and I was going to have to be on every night. And so, yeah, that came with a little bit of different level of pressure. And I also wanted to get to 100 and still how are we going to go? Because 100 was at the regional. So we were going to have to make it pretty much the whole year without a loss. So that year I felt like there was more pressure, it felt like, than maybe the other 3.
And Nate, when you started at Roosevelt, where were they at with the winning streak at that point? Talk a little bit about the timeline there for you.
let's see, the streak for Roosevelt would have been broken in the winter of 2022 or 2002, 2003. That was the first year of the winter season. So it would have been December of 2002. So I came on in the start of fall 2001. So the streak was intact, both with the game wins and the state championships. So we went undefeated that first year, and then the streak ended at 111. Believe we won our first one or two games of that first winter season. And then we got beat early in the season in a game at Lincoln. So I was on the tail end of that with some names that year, Lindsey Thomas, Renee Lukey, some names that were a part of that. There was a real solid nucleus, like Becky was talking about, some kids who had started on some really good teams. That class at Roosevelt, and here's an even more amazing streak when I think about the winning streak, but those seniors in that class of 2000, all 2001, they never lost a game in high school at any level, varsity, sub-varsity, anything. That's unheard of. But when we moved into the 2002, 2003 year, the streak was still going, but it was a new team and new kids that were playing.
My next question is for both of you, and Becky, you have a longer runway with your winning streak the whole time, but did anyone, this was pre-shot clock era, right? So did anyone try to hold the ball or do anything gimmicky against Wakonda, or was it just a lost cause because you were that much better throughout the duration of the streak? Do you remember any gimmicks being thrown at you?
Gorman always made that game closer than I felt like it should have been. That was the first time where I felt like, I don't know why, honestly, why more teams didn't try to do that, quite frankly, but we would full court press teams, and that usually created a lot of havoc. I felt like they were good at controlling the press breaker situation and getting it into the half court. And then I just felt like if there was a shot clock, that thing would have been going off every possession. And that's kind of how it felt. They just shortened the game, and it made it, those games were somewhat close. I mean, I think they were 10, 12, 15 points. So yeah, they're the only ones that I really remember doing that, though. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, there were some close games in that last year. We were at the state tournament at the Huron Arena in fall of 2001, and we had a really, really close game against Aberdeen Central with Coach Seiler in the semifinals, and that was a real low scoring game in the 30s, and Aberdeen during that time would run a lot of time off the clock on the offensive end and work for the shot that they wanted. And I know that game was low scoring. And then in the championship game, that streak almost came to an end because we beat O'Gorman. I think it's funny that you mentioned O'Gorman, but we beat them. Coach Karlsrud was the head coach at O'Gorman at that time, just getting started out. But I think the final, it was really low scoring. It was like 36-31. And what people don't realize is that in the third quarter, we were down 9 at one point. May Lukey picked up her 4th foul. We brought her to the bench, and she sat, and we got down 9. So we're probably halfway through the third quarter, and Renee Lukey was, I mean, multi-time All-Stater, one of our best players. Fred puts her back in the game, and I just remember as assistant coaches, we go up and we're like, Fred, you sure you want to do this right now? I mean, we're halfway through the third quarter only. She's got 4 fouls. In a very assertive way, he told us, I'm not losing with my best players on the bench. And luckily we came back and we won that game and won a state championship and kept the streak alive. But those were 2 very close calls.
Well, we did have some close games. Like I remember the game that got us to 100 was a regional championship game. And our returning all-state player, Trina Hansen, had sprained her ankle in the first quarter. I picked up my 4th foul. I think it was midway through the third quarter. He sat me out for a couple minutes. We saw our lead go from like 10 or 12 to like 2 within like a couple minutes. He put me back in the game. Don't be dumb. Like, don't be stupid. So managed to get through that game. But yeah, that was a close one because we basically had to do it without Trina. But yeah, came back in, didn't foul out. So that was good. But yeah, won the game. We had good games with them.
Yeah.
They just weren't ones to slow it down or stall.
I did not realize that. I'm just smiling just at the similarities between those 2 stories, Becky, because you have two of the legends in South Dakota coaching, Coach Flynn and Coach Tibbetts, thinking the same way.
Yeah.
And you got to have your players out there to win games and to close out games. And sometimes there's a level of risk that goes into that, but there's also high reward.
Right.
Good coaching lesson for all of us right there too, because you see situations sometimes where that gets a little overprotected, but you trust your players to go in and make plays. And wow, I did not realize that. That's a cool story.
And then Becky, it was the Northwestern loss in the semis or the state championship? Was it?
That was the semis.
My question after what a remarkable 101 game winning streak, what was your dad, Coach Flynn's message to the team in the locker room after that? I think our listeners and viewers would be interested. What did your dad say?
Well, honestly, I don't know. I think I blacked out at some point, but no, no, it was all about, what a run we had and how much we have so much to be proud of. And I think my dad went on to say, I think obviously you want to finish with a state title, especially since your daughter is a senior probably in that thing. And I agree too that I'm glad that it was me up at that free throw line that missed that free throw and that I was involved or responsible for that loss, because I think it would have been a huge burden to carry for someone, if we had made it through that state tournament and ended up at 103 games, they ended up losing the first game the next year. To have that team carry that and be like, the streak is broke, I would have felt worse, I think, than I already do. But it was just, you have so much to be proud of. And, we've come so far. We've had a target on our back for the last 4 years, and that comes with a lot of pressure, but you guys handled it. And, we still have a game that we have to play tomorrow, and we're going to back out and we're going to show them what we can do. And I just remember thinking, I do not want to go out. I do not want to play that game. I've never, coming back and playing that next day after losing that game was the hardest thing I've probably ever had to do. But now I look and you think, what a blessing to be able to play for third. Teams would kill to do that. But yeah, that locker room, it was silent for a while, but that was kind of the takeaway is we have a lot to be proud of, and we've accomplished a lot, and, it wasn't going to go on forever. Streaks are meant to be broken, and this isn't going to define us, or what we've done. If I was going to be upset with Roosevelt for breaking the record, it was eased by the pain and the fact that we got Renee Lukey and Krista Orsak and Katie Pulver, Aaron and Teresa Case, all Roosevelt kids that all ended up coming to USD and playing for us. So can't beat them, join them, right?
Well,
so
you had a big supporter in Freddie with USD too.
yeah,
So he was.
I love Fred Tibbetts. Yeah.
Yeah, Freddie was former USD head women's coach, and obviously kids went there and played there too. But a lot of those riders went down and played. And one thing on the Roosevelt streak that I'll just add is that it was broken by Lincoln, and 3 nights later we got beat again by O'Gorman. So 111 straight wins, 2 straight losses.
Wow.
After that, everything, it comes to an end. But that when you look back at those things, you're just proud of the people that you were around. And for me, coming on the last part of it, just proud of all those kids, and they've gone on to do great things, and proud to be a part of a coaching staff.
I know you cared much more about team than individual, Becky, but we can't have you as our guest and not talk about your prolific scoring numbers. And your senior year, I think you referenced earlier, you lost some of your supporting cast going into that year, but was your best statistical year, 725 points in one season. Remember, back then, high school varsity teams only got 18 regular season. They play 20 now. So think about it in that context. You ended your career 3,268 points, which is just remarkable. That was at the time the most between boys and girls. But I want to fast forward to 2007. I went back and getting ready for this episode, I read an article in the Mitchell Republic, just how gracious you were. You actually traveled to the Corn Palace and you were in attendance the night Jill Young broke your record. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Jill, she was a great player. It was fun to be there. They asked if I would be willing to come up and present her with the record-breaking ball, and I said absolutely. First of all, the Corn Palace has been one of the best buildings I've ever been a part of. They won 2 state titles there. My kids have had huge moments in the Corn Palace, so that's just another momentous event. And, records are meant to be broken, and I certainly didn't expect that one to last forever. I did think our winning streak was going to last longer than it did, but I was really happy for Jill. Fun to pass over that torch to her, another coach's daughter. It was a cool experience. I was glad they asked me to be part of it and happy to do it.
Yeah, and that's a testament to you, Becky, and your selflessness. I thought that was a neat story to go back and read, and it's quite remarkable what you two have accomplished. So congratulations on that. We're going to transition to one more sponsor ad at this time, Insight. They're the folks who helped us with the visual assets to bring this podcast to life. And I can tell you, they don't just make things look good. They dive in, ask the right questions, and come back with great ideas that actually work. Whether it's branding, campaigns, or creative strategy, Insight has a way of helping businesses stand out and connect with people in meaningful ways. If you're looking to partner and make an impact on your business, check them out at insightmarketingdesign.com. All right, Becky, you are from small town Wakonda, and you make the decision to attend and play basketball at Division I Creighton. What was that jump like for you? What was that transition like?
It wasn't as hard as you might think it was. Just because we played at a faster rate and a faster pace in Wakonda, fundamentally, I felt like I was as sound as anyone in the program. My dad was a huge stickler on the fundamentals, which I felt really helped in my transition to the next level. I think the biggest thing was the physicality of it. I mean, we had one universal weight machine that sat in the middle of our laundry room in Wakonda. So like weight training wasn't a huge deal. I mean, we were in there a couple times a week, like circuit type thing. But I remember thinking the physicality of the next level was probably the biggest adjustment. And then just driving in Omaha with the Flynn sense of direction and not being able to, that was scary, you guys. And yeah, so.
Are there any stoplights in Wakonda?
No, there's not. And all these one-way streets, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? Yeah, and I remember the first game that I played at the Civic Auditorium. And Creighton is kind of in North Omaha. It's not a great area, not the safest area, I guess. And that's kind of where Civic was. And I remember my roommate and I, she's from a small town in Illinois. We came out after our basketball game and, we thought we were doing good by locking our car. Like in Wakonda, I mean, you left the keys in it. Because I remember Dad saying, well, leave the keys in the car. You don't know if someone's going to need it. Who's going to need it? But anyway, they had broke in, our windows were broken. We had even thought we were really being sneaky by hiding our purses underneath the car seat. Those were obviously gone. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm not in Wakonda anymore. So that part was almost harder to get used to than the actual playing part. And on the court, I felt like as far as the transition goes, I was fortunate enough to be able to go in there and start right away as a freshman. And I think that was a testament to the background of what Wakonda gave me.
And just rattling off some of your highlights during your Creighton years, Becky, you were a 4-year starter, freshman of the year in the league, defensive player of the year. You had a triple-double versus Mizzou. You have a school record at the time in steals. Maybe it still stands. I don't know. You were academic All-American. And Joe, your brother, once wanted us to ask you about if you remember anything about the triple-double you had against Missouri that included, by the way, 8 steals. So it was almost a quadruple-double.
I think Joe would know. I don't remember that. Yeah. So I do remember someone saying it was the first one at Creighton or whatever, like it was a big deal. But I remember we won the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about all I remember. But yeah, no, that's cool. I think it was the first one. And so that was fun. And yeah, I mean, obviously you don't do that again without your teammates too. I mean, having over 10 assists, someone's on the receiving end of those and making those shots. And yeah. And I was, again, kind of getting to guard, other teams' best players. So kind of being up in the action of things, you're going to probably leads to more steals. But that was kind of what we did at Wakonda too, is, we turned people over and it was fun. I loved my 4 years at Creighton. I have nothing but fond memories from the time I was there and got to play with some really good players and got to play on some really good teams. So I do remember being in the locker room though. It was our first loss of the year and I'm in the corner crying. It was basically a state title because and I remember the coach coming over at the time and saying, Becky, dude, we're not going to win every game, not that you have to be complacent with losing, but we're not probably going to go on a 101 game winning streak. So it's a long season. We're going to be playing 30 some games, but I remember just thinking this is, that was hard to get used to. And not that we lost a ton those first year, but just not winning them all.
Well, you're not used to it. I mean,
No,
that's
But you're not used to
no,
it.
you hadn't had that too much, so only natural you'd be more than frustrated after
I didn't understand why
having
everyone
that.
else wasn't crying.
Yeah, exactly.
Why am I the only one crying here?
Yep. So Becky, you finished up at Creighton, your playing career and got a degree and started some coaching after that point. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I went out to University of Dayton. I got my master's out there in clinical psychology. And honestly, I'd not planned on getting into coaching, but Coach Chad Lavin had just gotten the job. And I remember him calling me up when I was at Dayton finishing up. And he said, Flynn, you got to come back and help me rebuild this women's basketball program. I mean, if you know Lavin, that's exactly how he said it.
Yeah.
And I was like, Labs, like Trina and I, my best friend, were planning to go to California. I had a U-Haul. We had a U-Haul booked to go to California. And he's like, do you guys even have a place to stay? And I'm like, well, not yet. I mean, but I have a U-Haul. And he's like, do you have a job? I'm like, well, no, but it's really hard to get one unless you're in California. We have to get out there because I've been applying. And he's like, this is stupid. This is a stupid plan. He said, you got to come back 2-3 years tops, save some money, and then you and Trina can go back out. You can go out to California. Well, here I am now, 29 years later. So, and Trina did come back. She actually went out and was the nanny for Ted Waite because I felt terrible about it. But she ended up coming back and she was our grad assistant there for a couple of years too. But yeah, I never did make it back out to California. Trina lived there for 15 years and now she just moved back. So
Mhm.
right after COVID. So yeah, that's my story about how I got into
Whoa.
coaching. It was Lavin's fault. 2-3 years, he said, and then I just couldn't leave him. And so he ended up, that's kind of when I got out of it, was when he ended up retiring. If he was still coaching, I probably would still be plugging along, you guys. I don't know.
That's a heck of a Coach Lavin imitation
Gosh.
there too,
I could give you a lot of Coach
what you.
Lavin stories. That's a whole nother episode. I don't know.
Oh, that's awesome.
and those USD teams were very good. And I want to ask you, Becky, about Mandy Kopel, because you're talking about Becky's one of the all-time greats, and I think you knew it at the time. You were coaching another one of our all-time great girls basketball players ever to come out of the state. And so what was that like? What was your rapport like with Mandy?
Mandy's awesome. She's the most humble, down-to-earth human you'll ever meet. I've never seen a player that she was just so efficient. Like, I talk a lot about efficiency, but like the gal didn't miss. She was the best teammate to others too. And she ended up being the national player of the year in Division II.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, she could drop 30 and get 15 rebounds and make it look easy. You know, now you see Ashlyn Kopel, her niece, who's coming up, and she just reminds me a lot of Mandy. You know, I felt like Mandy was just almost a bigger, more maybe, but this was, like Ashley's still young. And so now plus they look so much alike. That's kind of
Mhm.
scary too. But yeah, Mandy was one of the best to play the game. Best player I've ever coached for sure. Um, yeah, she's amazing. It was fun to play with her. I remember she was a scout player, like, cause she was redshirting her first year at USD after transferring from SDSU. And Robin at the time was still making me plug away on that scout team trying to play you guys. And so I had Mandy Kopel set, and I kept calling out 41, which was 4 screeners and me, because we had one. And Mandy is like, no, like I'm not just going to keep being your screen setter. So I'm like, oh. So that's kind of how that went down. But yeah, I got to play with Mandy, I guess, on the scout team. But 4 years later, Lavin was like, Lynn, get off the court. He said, you're a shadow of what you once were, and I can't watch it anymore. Just get off. And that was the end of my playing career.
No more 41.
You're a shadow of what you once were. Thanks, Labs.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That's how you work yourself out of a job. I no longer had to be plugging away at practice.
Well, thank you, Becky, for sharing about your coaching experiences. And we always ask our Legends guests, we always end the episode on a question of legacy. We want to know, what would you like your dad's legacy, Ron Flynn's legacy, to be? And what would you like your legacy to be?
I think with my dad, and myself, I guess, someone who loved the game. I felt like my dad coached the right way. His philosophy was fear no one, respect everyone. And I felt like he coached that way. He never wanted to embarrass other teams. He just, and someone that I think was loved by his players and the community, someone that he loved the community and his players, and he invested in the youth. And I just felt like built a winning program from the ground up. And I'm so incredibly proud of what he did there during that time. And like you were talking to, he did really take pride in mentoring young coaches. I felt like that was something that he, even till the day he died, he was doing his podcasts on his Marco Polo, trying to leave tips and words of wisdom. I don't know how many coaches are running around South Dakota with bar napkins with the plays that he's developed, but and I just think that was something that he wanted to give back to the coaching community. And I'm really proud of just the way he did things. And I guess with me, yeah, I just hope that people remember that I just love the game and appreciate the way that our team played. Growing up in a small town, I could not have pictured a better place to grow up. Absolutely have the most love and respect for the community of Wakonda. And yeah, and just that our team played with a lot of pride and a lot of joy and brought a lot of pride to our community and our town. And I'm really proud of that.
Well, Becky, I just to your family and we talked about your dad. I know your mom. I had to be very supportive of everything as a coach's wife and just being supportive of your family. But want to thank your family just for the impact that you've had on basketball in our state. This is one of the reasons why we do this podcast, that we can recognize that and show appreciation and just what you have done for girls basketball. And I can speak to that as a former girls basketball coach, the foundations that you guys laid for our players today, getting that on the map. And that's what makes being a part of girls basketball in this state so much. I mean, it's special. It's awesome. And thank you to you, your dad, your family for the impact that you had in paving the way for us who followed.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. I love what you're doing here. I think it's so cool to shed light on basketball in our state. I think we have so much to be proud of. And just thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you again, Becky, and we wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And as we wrap up this episode, just want to provide a programming note. Our next podcast episode will launch on Wednesday, January 7th. We're going to take some time off over Christmas break, but be on the lookout for future episodes. And again, you can follow the podcast on social media, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartMedia. Again, thank you, Becky, for joining us. Until next time, yours in hoops, Todd Schlekeway and Nate Malchow.
Thanks. Merry Christmas, guys.